says...
I
still haven't got used to that.
I've got to click continue, Kev.
Oh, yes. You have to click continue to give permission for being recording. It must be a new legal thing. That's why they've started doing it. Anyway, hello, Jessica. Sorry, we've had plenty of time to chit chat. You've been taking advantage of the weather.
Will, I'm so sorry. Mercury retrograde has started, and communications and memory loss and all those kind of things. I blame it on the stars. That's me. I
will only have to say yes. I'm sure that's the case. Will, do you know anything about horoscopes and horology?
Nothing whatsoever, mate. Might have had a glance in doing just 17 on me lunch break when I worked in the supermarket. But other than that, I know nothing of it.
My parents used to get whichever paper had Eva Petulengro in.
Oh, yes.
With her daily horoscopes. I think she or there was another guy in the Daily Mail, and he was subsequently found to be recycling horoscopes from about 7 years earlier and just pasting them to totally different star signs on totally different days of the year. So some are not as genuine as others.
Is that the guy who had the letter from... No, I think this was Kelvin Mackenzie, but there was famously sent a letter sacking the guy for doing the horoscopes like that started off, as you will already be aware. Sacking him, the only the only thing Kelvin Mackenzie's ever done that's made me feel anything other than
contempt. I refuse to give him the credit. Right, shall we begin recording this, and we can keep all our chit chat for the chit chat times. Recording begins at 7:14. Hello. Today's recording may include some strong language. I'm going to start that again because I couldn't say the word include. Hello. Today's recording may include some strong language and adult themes. Knowing some of the people involved, it's bound to, so beware. Hello and welcome to Comic Cuts, the panel show. My name's Kev F Sutherland. You might know me as a writer and artist for Beano, Marvel Comics, Oink, Red Dwarf, Doctor Who, Viz, and my graphic novel adaptations of Shakespeare, but chances are you probably don't. My guests today, talking comics, are Will Hodgson and Jessica Martin.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, whatever your time zone is. Hiya,
nice to see you, Kev. Nice to be on here and see everyone. I can't see anyone, but nice to be on here and all of that.
Good.
Are we going to be?
That'll be fun to edit. Sorry, Jessica. Forgive me, Jessica. What did you say? Will we be seen,
or is it just the comic panel that will be seen?
It's an audio podcast, and as I'll be explaining, there's a chance for them to see the pictures on the websites and on the podcast, but we're going to be describing the pictures as we see them.
Right.
I have two guests with me today who've brought with them a panel from a comic. Oh, no, before I do that, I do the theme tune. Oh, wait a minute, you're going to love this. I say you're going to love this, you're going to hate this. I'm going to do the theme tune, and I have been told the sound of it is an acquired taste. It goes. Comic Cut. We're looking at a panel, and we comprise a panel. There's a few of us, so the panel sees a panel, and we talk about the comics from the panel we discuss, and we call it Comic Cuts. Be honest.
Awesome.
Awesome. Yeah. That's original. I mean, I've been told it makes your ears bleed. I have two guests with me today who've brought with them a panel from a comic or something close to that. We're going to see if we can identify it and talk about it, and maybe we and you will learn something about comics we didn't already know, or maybe we'll just show off a bit and have an enjoyable chat. Let's see. Joining me from Chippenham is Will Hodgson. How's Chippenham, Will?
Oh, it's not too bad, Kev. It's like the sun's out. There's Chippenham Folk Festivals going on in a socially distanced and minimalised form, a very minimalist small folk festival in Chippenham, which is I would like to see it every year, to be honest with you, mate, because it grinds me tits, to be honest with you. But there's the Chippenham Morris men who are making a valiant effort to get something done down there, and there's a craft fair and all of that. So yeah, it's like normally we'd be like awash with the Morris men and all of that, and mummers of like half the country. But it's just a solely Chippenese folk festival this year.
And in Chippenham, Will, you are one of the unique career trajectories, because you're the only person I know who's gone from wrestling to hairdressing via comedy. How did the wrestling start?
Well, that's all kind of been over-egged a bit, because I was on a documentary where Christopher Eccleston was narrating it, and he said I'd been wrestling for 2 years. That's not the case. I went to wrestling school for a few months, and I participated in some wrestling matches. So I have done wrestling, but I never made a living out of it. I used to get £5 for helping set the ring up, and like a spare part in a battle royal. I went to a wrestling school in Trowbridge, and I did some shows for the PWA, which is the Professional Wrestling Alliance, and it was a lot of fun. I met some great people there. I don't know if you've seen that film Fighting with My Family. It was family pretty much like that. It was the son was like the champion of it. He was like the world champion of Trowbridge, I guess. And then you've got his mum was the booker. His dad was a ex-wrestler. He's a nice old boy. He used to, with me and him and another kid, used to set the ring up before the matches. And it used to be like in a bakery upstairs. We do the training, and then it got moved to the town hall on alternate weekends to dog shows. And then we started doing the training in someone's back garden, and so in like literal backyard wrestling stuff. I did a few things. I was lecturing media studies part time as well at the time, so it was a bit of a kind of odd time in my life. But I just didn't have. I was kind of genuinely worried about what sort of injuries I was going to get from it, because I was getting quite banged up quite a fair bit. Just because when all I was doing was being a spare part and being cannon fodder for guys like the 30 Stone Rampage and the
30 Stone Rampage.
The 30 Stone Rampage runs a memorabilia shop in Swindon called Martin. Really nice fella, but massive, 30 stone. And when he jumped on you, it hurt, mate.
Well, you could suffer so many physical injuries in wrestling, so you decided to go for inflicting mental injuries instead by subjecting yourself to stand-up comedy.
Yeah, it's because I sort of saw that film Man on the Moon. That was what done it. The thing about Andy Kaufman with Jim Carrey.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't realise you could do stand-up like that, because I thought stand-up was just like Frank Skinner, that kind of thing. And I'm not knocking that, but I didn't have any interest in that. So I thought like, then I started trying to do stand-up, and I just ended up doing that for, I still do a bit now. So it's been the thick end of 20 years.
Well, it was interesting, the things that you were interested in and wanted to talk about, because anybody who's seen Will, if you look at him now, you can see the wrestler. You don't see immediately the lover of Care Bears and My Little Pony.
No, I suppose you can't see my arms. I've got this. It's all like flagged up on there, and the tattoos, I suppose. But yeah, this was the thing. What I realised from like knowing a bit more about alternative comedy was that you could include elements of like sort of performance art and that kind of thing, which sounds really pretentious and wanky, but I was kind of influenced by not so much like what Andy Kaufman or Steve Martin were doing, like as in literally doing, but that idea that just like knowing sort of like, actually you can just do all kinds of weird shit, and eventually there'll be like people might get into it and that. So I just wanted to kind of bring the sort of things that I would have brought to being, because I could never play. I've always been into punk, and I could never play music or sing even to the level of being in like a punk band. So there's kind of like a lot of it's been like what I would have done and written songs about if I'd have had a punk band. If I could have found the unlikely that I could have found like 3 other people in Chippenham to want to be in a like an oi band that sung about Care Bears and that. So yeah, I suppose I just kind of ended up doing it by myself with no musical accompaniment and that.
Sadly, the world did lose out on the oi band singing about Care Bears, but this led to the 2004 Perrier Best Newcomer Award.
Yeah, never saw that coming, and yeah, it was a very kind of odd sort of trajectory from coming out of uni and then doing like this, say like trying to become a wrestler, doing stand-up and all of that. It was like a pretty mad, it was pretty mad 5 years, and it's been good because I've had like an interest in like another sort of like 10, 15 years after that and everything.
Well, I mean,
I've made worse decisions in my life than going to Jesters for that first time. And
is that where it was? Jesters in Bristol was your first one?
But yeah, died on my ass. And
but then that led to supporting on tour Ian Cognito, Mark Thomas. You've done on tour?
Yeah, supported Cogs on tour. That was a hell of an experience. God rest him. That was quite. That was in 2005. That was. Yeah, because I mean, if you're, I don't know if people know Ian Cognito that are listening to this, but he was a legend who's sadly no longer with us, and it was a proper like man out. It was one of them man out with a boy things, doing a tour with him, because it was basically like going on a pirate ship for like whatever. He's like Long John Silver and freaking Jim Hawkins. I was, and I don't know what Pat Gallagher would be. Pat Gallagher would be that guy with the Ben Gunn.
Ben Gunn.
Yeah, but it was a bit like that. It was kind of piracy on the highways of Britain.
Which brings us from comedy to Hepcats, the barbershop and beauty parlour. That's quite a gear trucker's, a truck driver's gear change of a career change.
Well, that's the whole thing of like the thing with the downside to doing I'm going to do like the stand-up equivalent of an oi band that sings about My Little Ponies, is it doesn't really pay the bills to a great extent. So and also my mum's owned a salon for years, since the late 60s, early 70s, and I'd never thought I was going to take it on, but I sort of thought like maybe I wanted to get like a trade so that I didn't have to rely on stand-up. So I thought about becoming like a spark or a bricklayer or something like that, and that was never going to happen. So then I thought, well, why not barbering, because there's a thing to work in, and my wife's a hairdresser and a makeup artist, so it just kind of made sense. But yeah, I never thought I'd be doing that in a million years, like even like a year before that. But again, glad I did.
And anybody who can see the state of Will's tonsorial elegance will have that, assume, as testament to Hepcats. Your hair was done at Hepcats, am I right?
My wife does my hair at Hepcats, yeah.
Fantastic. Check out any photos you can find of Will's hair. Talking of changing the subject, I also have with me Jessica Martin. Hello, Jessica.
Hello, Kev and Will, and everybody who's out there. Wow, what an interesting, eclectic evening this is turning out to be.
Well, I think we can give Will a run for his money. We've gone from wrestling to hairdressing via all those trajectories. We go from the West End stage to graphic novels. People who are most, I think, familiar with your name, Jessica Martin, are familiar with you on stage. And I certainly encountered you first as one of the voices on Spitting Image. Am I right?
Yes, you're right. And in fact, my career path kind of crosses with Will's, but 20 years before. So when I graduated from uni in 1983, I got my first break performing with the likes of Rory Bremner and Harry Enfield on the alternative circuit as an impressionist. And it was really a stopgap on my way to legit fame and fortune, which is what I hoped for as an actress. And sorry, that's my husband. He's taken the bottles out from the bank holiday add to the ambience. Yeah, and I could do a few voices. And with that, I didn't even blag. It was Rory Bremner. He blagged his way on behalf of me to doing a show called News Review. So I had like Janet Street Porter, Margaret Thatcher, and Barbara Streisand. You know, I had a repertoire of about 3 voices. And I had to kind of build up on that, literally faking it till I made it. And imposter syndrome was true in all senses of the word. And I ended up getting an audition. I didn't even want the audition. The talent scouts had come to a cabaret club to watch Rory doing all his political characters. And I was doing Barbara Streisand. It's also a famous disco song. And they decided that Barbara Streisand would make a very funny puppet on Spitting Image. And anyway, to cut a long story short, I got an audition for that show and another show called Copycats, which was contrary to Spitting Image, which was cutting edge political satire. There was Copycats on ITV, 6:30, variety, mainstream, people-pleasing show. And I very happily got onto that with a team of 6 very, very experienced and much more famous guys than me, including Gary Wilmot and Bobby Davro. So, my life taking surprising turns kind of ceases to surprise me, but moving to where we are presently, whereas the surprising and very lucky turns that I got before were like fate happening to me, the comics thing was very much a sort of conscious decision out of something that was spontaneous, if you like. So I was busy sketching for my own pleasure after, I don't mind saying it, you know, when an actor, actress particularly has, you know, been risen to fame very quickly at a very young age, there inevitably has to be the roller coaster where you come to slightly more dry spell. And for me, that kind of coincided with, you know, I was in my probably approaching my mid-40s and my kid, bringing up my kids, all of that stuff. And I was sketching for my own pleasure, but I happened to land a fantastic job, which kind of hit me out of the blue. I played Lady of the Lake in a tour of Spamalot. And a guy called Phil Jupitus happened to be playing King Arthur. And Phil, you know, is a Renaissance man, as we all know, and he's on QI, and he's a poet, and he's this, and he's that. And amongst other things, I found out he loves comics. So every Wednesday on our tour, you know, Phil would come back, oh, I've got a copy of Garth Ennis, The Boys, and oh, Luther Arkwright. Have you heard of Brian? I've heard of Brian Talbot. I proudly put up my hand and said I had spent my hard-earned cash on a beautiful copy of Alice in Sunderland. Oops, the beer bottles are going again. Alice in Sunderland, because I really love the look of it. So I love things that are, when I say aesthetically pleasing, you know, we're in the field of comics now. So one person's aesthetic is very different to someone else's, but I loved and still love Brian Talbot's sort of illustrative, representational, very, very detailed thing that encompasses real history, alternate history, kind of Monty Python, ironically, since we were doing Spamalot. So anyway, I dropped that I kind of knew something about comics. And then I also presented Phil Jupitus with this book of sketches that I've been doing for myself. I hadn't shown many people, but I thought he likes comics. He might, you know, have something to say about my pictures. And he did. He just said, oh, you know, you've got a very good line. Have you thought about doing a graphic novel? And I said, what's a graphic novel? Sorry, guys. But, you know, I was naive then. I was an ingenue in comics then. Oh, you know, look, you're an actress. You must have written, every actress has written themselves a script, put a script and the pictures together. Anyway, long story, very, very short now. That was a light bulb moment, 2011. That's when I started my journey into rediscovering comics, because I always loved comics when I was a child. And finding out about this wonderful, big, exciting vista of graphic novels where literally it's not a genre, it's a medium in which you can do anything you like. You can tell stories with pictures, and that was like, wow. And within a year, I had come up with an idea for a graphic novel, and I started kind of going to conventions and meeting various people. I'm going to shut up talking about me now, Kev.
Well, no, this is marvelous, because the subject matter you've chosen for your graphic novel work overlaps with your previous career. The first thing was Clara Bow, the It Girl. Am I right?
Yeah, It Girl, a short, very, very short comic, 12 pages, in which I tried to tell the essence of Clara Bow's highly dramatic life. And it was almost like you know, a market tester to see, look, will a comic audience go for this, what I consider to be, I wasn't even thinking it's different. I was thinking, this is my authentic voice. So I know I've been an actress, and people think that being an actor is self-expression, but it's not necessarily. It's expressing yourself probably through, you know, the play is the thing. All the time I say this, and I say this even back in the days when I was doing impressions. If the writing was great, which it was with things like Spitting Image, I mean, you know, your job's done if you can do the voice as well. So this was really about me exploring my particular interests, which were film history, old movies, the big old bad old days of Hollywood, as a precursor to the big graphic novel that I was planning, called Elsie Harris Picture Palace, about a girl working in the 30s film industry, behind the scenes. So
yes. And Elsie Harris Picture Palace, it's a very romantic 1930s behind the scenes, reminding me of the Singing in the Rain world of behind the scene, which you touched on a little bit of that with Me and My Girl, which your award-winning West End run with the aforementioned Bobby Davro.
No. So not Bobby Davro, Gary Wilmot.
Forgive me.
Who is very much, before anyone says, oh yeah, Gary Wilmot is, he is somebody who just, I mean, he started off, I think, as a bricklayer in his teens and made his mates laugh. Then he, had a club act, and then he was on television. When I got my big break, he was a big star on Saturday Night Telly, and he is now a highly respected stalwart of the stage, in musicals and everything. He does it all. But his big break and my big break in musicals was Me and My Girl, which we did in the West End. That was fantastic show.
And Elsie Harris Picture Palace draws on a little bit of those experiences, but also it found itself an audience, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. It found itself an audience. I have to do this now, because if you don't talk about it, no one knows, do they? It's the tree falling in the forest. But it got shortlisted for first graphic novel prize, which meant that I immediately got approached by an independent publisher, Milk, MIWK. And then that was another cross section, because the guys who ran Milk Publishing were huge Doctor Who fans. And I was in 4 episodes of Doctor Who playing an intergalactic werewolf. And that, it sounds, I'm just saying it as a throwaway thing, but honest to God, playing Mags in The Greatest Show in the Galaxy has been like, it's been like my Willy Wonka golden ticket. It's just the gift that keeps giving, because there are so many Doctor Who fans in our world, in the comics world, the geek world.
It's very funny you should mention Willy. It's very funny you should mention Willy Wonka, because I used to run the Comic Festival in Bristol. I ran it from 1999 to 2004. And one of the most surprising guests who came along to sign pictures was the actor who had played Mike TV in the film Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory way back in 1970. He was 9 years old. He's done no film role since then. And he still, I think to this day, goes around comic conventions and signs photos of his 9-year-old self.
Wow. Well, we were just watching it this afternoon. So my 22-year-old and 19-year-old son and daughter were indoors on a lovely hot sunny day, and it was on the telly, the Gene Wilder version, that's my Willy Wonka. And
it's the Willy Wonka.
Yeah,
nobody likes that one with a strange impersonation of Michael Jackson.
Yeah, it's probably going to be cancelled pretty soon, huh?
Now, I think we have with us some comic panels, don't we? I've asked everybody on the panel to bring a panel to the panel, and you're going to be able to see these images on the podcast, depending where you get your podcasts from, or on my website, kevfcomicartist.com, or on my Twitter. But you shouldn't need to see these pictures, because we're going to be able to describe them. Jessica, I would love to look at your picture first, if that would be okay. Allow me to share it.
Right. Okay, so
hang on, I'm doing it now.
All right.
Now I think we can see that. Can you see that, Will?
Yeah, I can see that.
Well, good job, Will, because you're going to try describing it. Tell us what we're looking at.
Okay. Well,
No, Jessica, you don't tell us what we're looking at. Will's going to try and have a guess at what on earth we're looking at and where on earth it might come from. So, Will, what on earth do you think this is?
Okay, well, this appears to be a crystal ball, like a fortune teller's crystal ball, and there's 2 hands that appear to be female hands with dark, sort of like reddish nail polish and rings on them that appear to be kind of glove type things. They seem to be the hands of a mystical person, probably a fortune teller, judging by the crystal ball thing, possibly like some kind of like sorcerer, necromancer person. Inside the crystal ball, there is a male face, and it appears to be he looks very much like someone who you might see in an old movie. He's got a kind of Errol Flynn, Clark Gable-ish sort of quality about him. He's got a classic hairstyle and a thin, neatly trimmed moustache, and is a very handsome person. And it's like a sepia-toned image, which that combined with his aesthetic makes it look like it's, and the fact that he's in a crystal ball implies it's someone from like the distant past who's not alive anymore.
For the benefit of the panelologists at home, the students of line and picture who can't see what we're looking at, the line drawing is, to me, it looks like it's actually done with pen, and it's a vintage, a style which is very much not the Marvel comic style. It's much more a style that you'd see a lot in the DC Vertigo comics, like Sandman Mystery Theatre had a style like this. And in fact, there's an artist whose identity is springing to my mind who might actually be responsible for this, an artist called Mike Kaluta. That's who I first think of when I see this. You'll recognize quite a lot of the style of the art. It's not unfamiliar, it's not distinctive, very realistic. As Will has said, looks like to me it's set in the 1920s or the 1930s. The coloring of the comic with bold green in the caption boxes, and then lots of detail and gradation in the colorings, suggests to me that it's either very, very good watercolor, or it's been colored in Photoshop or colored on computer in more recent years. So I'm thinking this is a comic from the 2000s, maybe going back to the 90s. Are we close, Jessica?
Yes, you are. Actually, I neglected to have a look at the actual date of this, but you are right. What a wonderful description, Will. Does anyone remember, I'm probably showing my age here, there was a program I remember when I was little called Going for a Song.
Yes,
Arthur Negus.
Arthur Negus.
And this is the precursor of the Antiques Roadshow, but he had, you know, he did these really intricate descriptions. But this is, yeah, the description, both Will's description and your identification of the style and art are spot on. So this is a very...
Wait a minute, we're going to have a guess at the title first.
Okay.
Will, I mean, I know I'm having a stab in the dark too, but have a guess at what sort of comic, sort of title do you think this might be?
I reckon it's got, I agree with you about the DC Vertigo thing. I would have, if I had to guess the date, I would have guessed probably late 80s, around about the sort of post-crisis sort of beginning of the Dark Age time. It looks like it's DC. The title, it would be, I'm thinking of these, there were some anthology comics that were British comics. They had reprints of DC material in them, and it was called something like Shockwave or something like that, and it compiled various kind of more kind of mature readers DC things. So that would be, if I had to have a stab in the dark guess, I'd say it was something that was compiled in Shockwave around about 1990.
And my guess is that it's the artwork of Mike Kaluta, and it's from Zatanna. Am I close?
Okay, wow. Well, I would say that you're both half right or 3/4 right. So it is a Vertigo comic, and the artist is Michael William Kaluta. But I don't, you see, it could have been an anthology, but I have bought it as Madame Xanadu, Exodus Noir, and it's written by Matt Wagner. And I am still to this day really sad that Vertigo decided to axe this whole line of stories, because I've since managed to get my hands on another Madame Xanadu with different artists attached to it. But I thought, wow, what a wonderful premise. So the premise is the hands, as you so rightly identified, Will, belong to the tarot reader, Madame Xanadu, who's based somewhere in Los Angeles and Hollywood in the 1940s or any time in history, because she's obviously reincarnated in this wonderful comic. This was one of the first comics I picked up when Phil Jupiters had uttered the magic words graphic novel. So I went to the bookshelf and I bought 2 books, both of them Vertigo. One was Fables and the other was Madame Xanadu. And I then avidly researched, because you can see why this appeals to me, Will, can't you? It's got the, as you know, Will, you described the face as being, it is like Errol Flynn, but I think of Don Amici. So for the film buffs out there, Don Amici and also Cesar Romero, they were the Latino 1930s movie stars. And you know, as Kev rightly pointed out, my interest in terms of what I produce in comic form is hails from, you know, it's harking back to the golden days of Hollywood and entertainment. And before the podcast started, I had mentioned something about Mercury retrograde, and I am kind of into things of an esoteric, magical nature. So this whole Madame Xanadu, this idea of this tarot reader who sort of investigates horrible, grisly, very Vertigo-esque, you know, murders and things, it just kind of floated my boat.
Well, also something like tarot, it really lends itself to comics, doesn't it? Because tarot cards are, in a random order, a comic strip of a sort.
They are.
We're telling stories with pictures because the pictures do a job that words alone and description can't do.
Absolutely. And I'm a self-confessed, I'm an addict to YouTube. I will listen and watch my tarot readings by about 6 different readers. And I know it's all, people say it's BS or whatever, but I love the storytelling skill. I mean, these people, you might call them snake oil salesmen, but the way that they can read things into a picture is the same way. It's like when people are reading comics. Yes, there are words on the page and the picture says something, but everyone will take something different from the comic, and you can revisit it and you'll notice stuff the next time you go to it. So yes, it is that these all hail from the ancient times of hieroglyphs, when a picture, you know, said 1,000 things, and probably in Chinese calligraphy they can still tell 1,000 things.
That's Matt Wagner and Mike Kaluta's Madame Xanadu from DC Vertigo. Well, I think we've got to find out what Will's bought with him. Bear with. Oh, hang on. Just 1 second while I change the size of that picture for us. Okay, is everybody seeing a nice big version of this picture?
Yep.
You can see it, Jessica?
Yes, I can.
Our second image is up on the screen, and quite the contrast. If you can't see the picture at home, don't worry, it's on the website. It should be wherever you get your podcasts from, but you shouldn't need to be able to see it because Jessica is about to describe it. What are we looking at? Okay,
so we're looking at a rectangular, let's say portrait format panel with a man looking out from a bedroom door. We know it's a bedroom door because there's a lady towards the back of him in a pair of red pajamas with a very revealing, I was going to say décolleté, but it's her back. So it's a cheeky back with a V cut into these. They're not baby doll because she's actually got pajama bottoms, but kind of slightly baby doll-esque style of pajama, and a kind of Veronica Lake, but brunette hairstyle. So I'm thinking actually it's not 40s. I'm thinking this is a 1950s comic. And there's a giveaway at the bottom of the panel, bottom right hand, we have the Superman insignia, and it says the end in sort of scroll format. But it's not Superman, don't worry, it's not Superman peeking around the doorway. It's somebody who he's devilish because he's got the widow's peak hair and the white streaks, a bit like the Master in Doctor Who. And he's got the tash, he's got a wicked tash, and he's winking and he's saying, "What do you think?" Well, what do we think from that single? What's gone on in that bedroom? Oh, well, my goodness.
I'll tell you, we've had 2 pictures in a row with suave, debonair, very trimmed moustaches. Jessica suggesting this could be the 1950s. I think it has to be much later, simply because it's suggesting that these people are about to go to bed together, which didn't happen in the 1950s. How anybody was born in the immediate post-war period has always puzzled me, because my parents convinced me that sex wasn't invented until long after 1963. This image, for the benefit of the panelologists at home who study line and the way these things are put together is drawn in, again, I would say, a style you'd see very popularly in DC Comics. DC Comics from the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. The colouring is very DC from the 90s onwards. It's been done in computer. The Superman logo is a giveaway. The lettering of the words "the end." I'm even going to be nerdy enough to suggest that's a letterer called Tom Orzechowski. I could be proven totally wrong, and it's somebody like Richard Starkings. But a lot of letterers do actually have a distinctive style of lettering, which, even though many of them have fed it into a computer to apply the lettering now, you can still tell them apart. And Tom's lettering looked like that. Tom designed an awful lot of comic logos that are very, very famous now. The woman in the picture looks like she could be Wonder Woman, except she's wearing no superhero costume, but she's got the black hair, although she's got quite a serious, not quite evil, but slightly lascivious look on her face. Basically, they're about to do it. They're going to do the deed, and they're going to do the deed in a comic. So I think we've got to be talking after the late 80s, when sex arrived in comics, and probably in my parents' imagination. So Jessica, would you like to have a stab in the dark and guess what comic this could be from?
Well, I'm stating the obvious here, but I'm just going to say Superman, but I don't know which story it is. And can I also just point out that it is how strange how actually in comic style, I see now where you're coming from with the, we're past the Will Hayes Code and people are in the bedroom, so things are happening. But there is a weird sort of anachronicity that goes on in comics, that things can be drawn in a style that harks back to decades before, but it doesn't matter because we're in comics, so they have their own time, don't they?
That's very true. And my suggestion for this comic is that it could be something that's slightly echoing the style of another comic, because I think this could be from DC's Elseworlds, where they did stories along the lines. Marvel did a series called What If, which are being made into animations for TV now. And Elseworlds was a similar but slightly more long form, where you would take your characters and you would put them into situations which wouldn't fit the continuity of those characters, would break the rules of those characters, but on the other hand were the ideas that writers cannot resist. What if Superman hadn't had his powers? This looks like what if Superman grew a moustache, grew Stan Lee's hair, and then had it off with Wonder Woman. Will, put us out of our misery. What are we looking at?
You're looking at, now, with regards to colouring, this is actually from the trade paperback version, I believe has been recoloured. So that's proviso. This is from 1986, I believe. I also should have checked my date, but this is from Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, which is Alan Moore and Kurt Swan.
Oh man!
So that's what was supposed to be the final adventure of the pre-crisis Superman. So Alan Moore wrote the story, and he got back Kurt Swan, who's probably like the iconic artist of the Silver Age, kind of big Boy Scout Superman. And what we're seeing in this panel, this is a story that is one of my favourite comic stories. I think it's probably one of Alan's best things that he's written in mainstream comics. And this is, I've always found this particularly a moving kind of story. It's the whole thing of Superman, his world basically becoming unglued. People, friends of his, are killed. His enemies come back much more dangerous and psychopathic. Even the harmless ones, like the prankster, the toy man, come back. And then he takes all of his friends to the Fortress of Solitude, because he realizes then the next thing to happen is going to be Luthor and Brainiac. The real menaces will come back even worse as well. The framing device of the stories, this is what this panel is. The framing device is that Lois Lane is being interviewed by a journalist about the final days of Superman, and her husband is there as well, who is called Jordan Elliott. Jordan Elliott. And at the end of the Superman basis, spoiler if you've not read the comics, the big bad turns out to be Mr. Mixes Pitlick, and Superman has to kill him to save everyone. And he's so ashamed of himself that he walks into the gold kryptonite bit of the Fortress of Solitude, removes his powers, and then walks away into the North Pole to freeze to death and all of that. But in the last couple of panels, while the interview's been concluded, you see the baby that Lois Lane and Jordan Elliott have had reach into the coal that's near the fire and crush one of the bits of coal into a diamond. And then with this panel, it's then obviously clear that Superman has survived walking into the North Pole. He's got no powers anymore. He is just now a normal non-superpower person. But look how happy he looks in that final panel. He's all the bad guys are vanquished. He's now just having a well-earned retirement. But also there's hope because the baby appears to have superpowers as well. So there will be another Superboy and a Superman, and like the adventure will continue. So it's quite what starts off as quite a bleak thing. The thing with Alan Moore is, I think, from his work, and one occasion I had a quite long chat with him about this. So I was doing a gig in Northampton, and I think Alan really, although he's supposed to be the man who like killed all of this and like started the Dark Age, I think it was all kind of done. I think he's got a great love for the kind of cheesy black and white morality comics of the Golden and Silver Age as well. I think he really loves that kind of stuff. It's just it starts off as like a bleak thing. He thinks like a deconstruction and all of that, but it's actually quite the tone of the whole thing, although it's much edgier than the fact that it's Kurt Swan drawing it adds to it as well, because it is that Superman coming to an end. So it's like quite sort of heavy, but it's that whole thing of like, do you know what? Superman's like, that's the end of that Superman. And there's going to be a more kind of pared down one who doesn't do super ventriloquism and hasn't got Laurie Lamaris and all of this, got Jay Wilbur Wolfingham and all of the cheesy stuff. But he's basically going to be a Superman's going to be fine. Do you know what I mean? He's done his bit, and that's going to be his thing. What I love about this story is the beginning of it, because I think it was originally supposed to be canon, and there was some debate, and it says, this is an imaginary story, aren't they all? And I thought that's a brilliant touch.
Mm-hmm.
Alan Moore is a genius, I think. And I think what I really does, I love, like, obviously Watchmen and From Hell, all of that. But what I really, really like is when he gets to grips, when he dips his toe into the established superhero things like this, and things like What You Get for the Man Who Has Everything, when he does stuff with mainstream superheroes. I think that's when he's at his best, because it's all the stuff that I loved when I was a kid, and it's framed in things that I think about as like an adolescent to an adult in those kind of things. I just feel like kind of squarely, I just feel like it kind of affects me in a way, because it's those things from your childhood with kind of more emotional themes added to it. I really love his DC Universe stuff.
If the reader at home hasn't encountered the story, What You Get for the Man Who Has Everything, it's written by Alan Moore. It's drawn by Dave Gibbons. It's available in collected editions, never out of print. It's even been made into an animated cartoon version as well, and is a splendid story you must seek out. And I'm hanging my head in shame that I didn't recognize this story, because I've got it. I read it at the time. I've read it since, and I should have instantly recognized it. What a fantastic choice. Jessica, you'll have to seek this out.
Oh, definitely. What do I know about Alan Moore? Well, I haven't got a copy, but I have dipped into From Hell, and I've got, oh crumbs, this is my mature brain letting me down, but I've got a book it's by Alan Moore and Eddie Campbell, and it's a series of writings, and there's a serpent woman in it. But again, like all the things that I'm drawn to in comics, I just love the look of it, and I love the esoteric, occult nature of it. But I think I would enjoy this as well. I think he's definitely a great storyteller.
And when I was trying to guess this, I was guessing at a line of comics called Elseworlds. Elseworlds, I think, probably were inspired by this book. This is called Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow. Is that right?
Yeah, it was in Superman, and it was the last issue of Action Comics and The Last of Superman of the first run, I think, but it's you can buy it as like a sort of slim trade paperback. Taking the conversation back, what you were saying about the man who has everything, apparently the animated episode of that is supposedly the one adaptation of Alan Moore's work that he actually likes.
That would be a first, because famously Alan Moore has his name removed from most adaptations of his work, and sometimes he's just referred to as the author, and sometimes just the artist takes all the credit as the creator. Watchmen and V for Vendetta being perfect examples of that. Well, thank you, Will. Thank you, Jessica. We've looked at Madame Xanadu by Matt Wagner and Mike Kaluta, and we've looked at Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow by Alan Moore and Kurt Swan. Google those and you'll find them. As for finding us, Will, where will we find you on the socials?
You can find me on @RamblingWillHodgson on Instagram, and you can also related to comics on @Bawdy Comics on Instagram, which is a very lo-fi erotic art zine that I do, and there's some other people from Chippenham contribute to it as well. Not safe for work, but if people were interested in that is my kind of like dipping me toe into the comic thing. But yeah, Rambling Will Hodgson on Instagram and Will Hodgson Comedian on Facebook.
And listener, get Bawdy. Jessica, where do we find you on the socials?
Okay, so Instagram, I'm @Jessica_Artemis, spelt ARTYMISS, all one word. I'm on Twitter @Jessica7Martin. And my website, which is jessicamartinofficial.com, has got or whatever you're interested in. You don't have to look at everything, but if you're interested in the comics, go to the little square, which is my comics and graphic novels, and my work in progress, which will be going to Kickstarter and will be published next year, is called Conrad, and it's about the amazing Conrad Veidt, German silent movie actor, but one of his last movies was playing the Nazi officer in Casablanca, and his face was the inspiration for the Joker in Batman. But my God, what a fascinating life, what a man. So he's my inspiration all year round.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Will. That was Comic Cuts. If you've enjoyed it or have any questions, you can find us on our social media as we've described. I'm on Twitter @Kev F Comic Artist and also at kevfcomicartist.com. Please click subscribe to be sure of hearing every episode when it comes out. Thanks again to Will and Jessica, and to you for listening. I've been Kev F, and this has been Comic Cuts, the panel show. And we're out. Yay. Thank you both.
Cheers for that, Kev. I really enjoyed that, mate. That was ace.
That was the greatest fun.
Enjoyed that.
Yes,
oh,
thank you. Conversation or the monologues or whatever, the combined monologues flowed.
Yeah, you brought great images and synergy between them.
Yeah, they were. There was a sort of relation between them, and sort of we're very different, but there were lots of kind of cross connections as well, I think.
I thought so. Do you know the thing that I feel worst? We didn't mention Mark Buckingham. Mark Buckingham, I shared a studio with Mark Buckingham, and he was your mentor. We're going to slice this back in.
Yes.
And Jessica, you had a mentor who we both know, Mark Buckingham.
Yes, Mark Buckingham. And this relates to the Madame Xanadu panel as well, because obviously Mark is known for being the chief artist of Fables, Vertigo. Madame Xanadu is Vertigo. And I was cheeky enough to approach Mark at, there was a Vertigo panel at the London Film and Comic Con when I was first starting out. And I was showing off these initial pages that I created for Elsie Harris Picture Palace. And I remember I was very nervous, but I thought, I've got to meet Mark Buckingham. I've got to find out if I'm on this wild goose chase, if I could be a contender. And he very, very sweetly had a look at these very, very rudimentary pages I'd created for the book. And he just said, these are lovely. He said, you understand narrative. He said, you know how to tell a story, which is very polite because, you know, he didn't say anything about the art, but what I'm finding out is, you know, in comics, actually, it is the ability to tell a story sequentially is of primary importance, and all the rest you can build up skills, etc. And with that, he aligned himself with me, and he said he would help me, and he did help me, and he's been my mentor and my friend in comics ever since then. So yes.
Well, hello, Mark, if you're listening.
Hello, Mark.
Great, I can splice that in. I might need to put this sentence in. You have just reminded me that we haven't mentioned a mutual friend, Mark Buckingham. That's it. I can then do that once we've started talking about the image.
What, you're brilliant at this, aren't you, Kev?
No, I'm learning that sound recording and editing are a learning curve. Brilliant. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Will. Thank you so much for your time. And this will be the best episode ever.
Hey, thanks so much. Lovely to meet you, Will.
Nice to meet you.